We're building this society for people, so we're going to need people. How do we find the right people to help strategize, plan, build, and run the new society? In this episode, we chat with Ryan Naylor about how to find the right team to start planning and constructing the city and society. We get into some great concepts such as acceptance versus tolerance, how to select what values and qualities to look for in people, and possibly, most importantly, why start with why. Ryan is the founder and president of localwork.com and Viva HR here in Phoenix, Arizona. With nearly 10 years of helping candidates apply and find jobs, Naylor has helped 100,000 plus people gain new employment. Ryan founded localwork.com in 2009. His inspiration for developing this small business was to support the local economy by reducing unemployment rates, connecting businesses with viable employees, and helping change the way employers and employees measure the value of a positive workplace culture. Before we jump right on into it, I'd appreciate it if you could check me out on Patreon and consider donating. There are some really cool rewards, like getting to be part of a story I'm going to create where you get to be a character in the new society. I'm going to release that podcast once I get a couple people to donate. So go check that out at patreon.com/outofthecave. The links for that and everything like Ryan's websites, where to find him and where to find me are all in the show notes. And finally, let's take our 13th step out of the cave with Ryan Naylor. Boom. All right. We're off, man. Let's get into it. All right. So, like I kind of mentioned just a minute earlier, I'm going to start off by kind of giving you a little bit of a frame. We talked about it, which is awesome, but I'll just give you this again just to put us back into it, and the listeners as well. So let's imagine that we've purchased an island off the coast of Fiji. Our goal is to create an optimized society fresh from start, meaning we'll rethink the culture, economic structures, educational systems, government systems, urban development landscape, etc. Now keep in mind that I can provide you with whatever resources necessary within the bounds of physics and whatever is available on Earth, of course, right? So in this one, we're going to talk about putting a team together to pull this whole thing off, which is absolutely insane, but let's give it a shot, right? How do we find the right people that will be able to shift their perspectives, see the vision, and be dedicated to following through on something so crazy and so difficult to pull off?
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Excited to be here to talk about that.
Yeah, man.
Well, I think as you're building any sort of team, framework, whether it be a new society, a company, or a sports team, so much of the organizational behavior is built on core values, kind of a core purpose or direction that's driving a common desire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. I totally agree. And formulating those values is kind of what gives you the direction and brings that cohesiveness onto the team, right?
Absolutely.
What are some of the things you can do to kind of formulate and discover what those values might even be?
Well, I mean, there's a number of different values you can put onto any team or society or organization, but it's really coming down to finding what your true baseline principles look like. So in order to build your core values, you need to really understand what your outcomes look like. A lot of times outcomes might be based on satisfaction. It might be based on happiness, some intrinsic values. It might be based on prosperity or wealth. And I think those core values help align and shape to the outcomes you're looking to create.
What would you recommend? What might be, if you were to personally create a society of your own, what might you look for?
Yeah. Probably the one that I would start with would be that acceptance is not the enemy of tolerance. And for me, that means that we can accept differing opinions. we can accept differing beliefs and differing norms, and just because maybe we accept their behaviors for what they are doesn't mean we have to not tolerate it. And I think a lot of times, and I look at our society, and I would try to kind of forecast what I would like to see on a society of my own, it would be that we can tolerate differing opinions. We can tolerate and accept differing views. But when they become enemies of each other, and when we start to look at acceptance as not tolerating, I think that's when you start to see societal friction. And in any sort of company, organization, or structure, you really want to look at what are your friction points. In building a sports organization, and your number one outcome that you're looking for is some sort of a championship, you'll see through the headlines, it's always talking about friction between players, friction between players and coaches, friction between coaches and upper-level management. And you'll see that that's always seems to be what kind of will wedge a team apart. And that translates into societal norms at the same time, that behavior across company culture and organizational success rates is you want to look at friction. And oftentimes friction initiates when the acceptance and tolerance are not aligned.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. Yeah, because I think there's a lot of that going on right now in the world, as you mentioned. People don't want to accept what's going on. People don't want to – not all people. Let me be specific because I try to be, not broad generalizations. But there are a lot of people that just want everyone to think the way they do, and have such a hard time seeing how someone could believe or have any other type of viewpoint.
Sure.
And I think that's a really good way of putting it, is saying, let's look at how can we view things? How can we talk to one another where we understand that people have grown up in completely different ways, accept the way they are, but don't, like you said, tolerate it. Don't put up with it if it's something that's just you're completely against. But you have to accept that that's the fact. You can't just be like, well, they shouldn't be like that. Well, they are that way.
Correct.
Right? So then when you come from that point of view, you also come from less of a attacking way, right? And that allows a better dialogue to be opened in order to bring them over to your point of view, right? And you need to even examine your own point of view, right?
Yeah.
In order to kind of come to a resolution and find, like, where is the truth in whatever this topic is that maybe being discussed.
Yeah, I find a lot of, I'm fascinated by politics on both ends of the spectrum. I know this isn't meant to be a political show by any means, but you look at a great example of Senator John McCain's funeral and services, and you had Vice President Joe Biden kind of be the keynote final speaker here in Phoenix. And Joe Biden recounted some amazing experiences between he and Senator McCain. And it was not built on, the fact that they didn't tolerate one another's political beliefs or political spectrum. Instead, it was full embrace of acceptance, of understanding the differences. And by mutual respect for one another, it eliminated friction in their relationship. Sure, they didn't see eye to eye, and I'm sure back when they were both senators for decades with one another, there was a tremendous amount of disagreement on topics and ideas, but never was there a time where there was friction based on lack of respect or acceptance from one another. And if I were to build a society on another island, that would be a very penetrating core value for me, kind of coming back to why we're talking about this, is that core value. What are the foundational core values that I would like to see instilled? And that would really be about tolerance and acceptance to the core. It's understanding that we can celebrate differences, we can accept differences, but we will never create a frictional environment in which there's lack of respect for those differences.
I'm so glad you used an example. I was trying to think of one while I was talking earlier and couldn't come up with that. I think examples are so important when you're discussing complex issues because it gives you a frame to operate and think around. And that was a great example because that's where the most friction I think in our country is between Democrats and Republicans. And so many people are just like, I don't even want to listen to what they have to say. But then you can't get anything done because you have to. So that's a great point where it's, okay, we know we have different points of view, but how do we work around that and keep, like you said, from having friction so we can come to a consensus and move whatever this is that we're fighting about forward? Because whatever it is, something's got to there's some kind of agreement has to be reached, or else everything just stays in stagnation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who might you look for as like the top 5 people to recruit to we don't have anything really yet. We kind of just have the idea. We've been, podcasting about it, whatever. But we're really going to get going. Who would you maybe pick as the 5, skill sets and type of people? Not just necessarily skill sets, which are important, but like qualities in a person that you'd look for.
Yeah.
Who would those people be?
I really like, going back to kind of our friction mindset here, I really like differing views in a organizational structure, especially at a leadership or the top 5 key influencers.
Mm-hmm.
I think too much of one viewpoint could lead you down a dangerous path because in nature, our human instinct is to find uniqueness. We're always scrambling to be the most unique one way or another. And in too much of a utopian society, there's going to be one hoarder amongst them. There's going to be someone that's going to do something just to be a little bit different, right?
Of course.
And I think that that's okay, and I think it should be embraced. And I think if you're creating a leadership team, it shouldn't be 5 cohesive, the same beliefs. It should be there should be some counterbalance to one another to understand why each other believes what they believe. And so if I were to build kind of an all-star team, so to speak, I would definitely look at this. I would want somebody involved, that understands behavioral therapy, that understands kind of true common ground of kind of the psyche and where people are going to go and motivational factors. I think of kind of a Simon Sinek would kind of be someone on my team that would say, hey, listen, let's truly understand the why behind this. What's that true motivational factor, that underlying kind of roaring in their bellies that's going to drive them to build a house with no materials? My man, that's right. That's it. I 100% agree. I think that would be someone right off the bat. Mm-hmm. On another spectrum, I really like discipline. Mm-hmm. I believe in a society of rule and of law, and I believe the counterbalance of that should be there as well. That there are consequences to every action, negative or positive, and that if people are unwilling to conform and obey to the laws and the structures, there needs to be a consequence derived with that. And so to me, and I don't have a name for you on that one, but I would definitely look at it's somebody that's kind of your rule keeper. Yeah. There's somebody that's fair-minded, that's balanced, that understands the behavioral structure of saying, in order to keep things in a progressive format, we have to have barriers. Yeah, I want to talk about that one real quick because I really like it. I'm a big fan of discipline. I'm trying to implement discipline into my own life because I know that seems to be the key. Like, I like do you know Jocko Willink at all? Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I like what he says, like, discipline equals freedom. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's true. It doesn't seem like it because you're like restricting yourself from doing a lot of things, but over the long run, you end up kind of freeing yourself from a lot of other stuff that could be a lot worse than the self-imposed restrictions you're putting on yourself. But I think that's a great one. And I think with doing the society too, that person would be great to help people do just that. Not necessarily an externally imposed discipline, which I think there is a necessity for, but helping to instill and guide people to driving their own discipline, right? And making sure we have a more disciplined, and I like to say wise society, where people have self-restraint and self-control,
instead of always looking externally for direction, they're able to find that internally and find that also that calmness that comes from it.
I couldn't agree more. I really like that ability of having an internal driver. But unfortunately, that internal driver, that common man in all of us, might lead us to have an internal driver to do something that's out of conformity of the group, that's self-beneficiary at the cost of somebody else. And there needs to be, in my opinion, some level of fear that can kind of harness that energy in. The fear of doing X is going to lead to Y results, and I need to – and that might be that knowing that external force kind of molds my interior desires and actions.
Sure. And I think you're very right. And how I could say maybe that even being set up is instead that you still have it. I agree. You still need that. And still there's need to be some that are kind of general, especially around things like murder and things that really affect, can affect things on a wide scale across the society. But I think there are certain ones, too, where you help people set up their own consequences. Because I think instead of saying, this is your consequence, and we're going to say this is your consequence, allowing people to say, I'm agreeing to this consequence. So I'm not going to do this thing because I agree that this will be what happens to me. And then I feel they'll even be more invested potentially in not doing that thing because it's come from internal, and they've selected it. So then they're going to be like, well, I'm not going to do that thing, right? And maybe just they allow to get an option. I don't know. Again, obviously spitballing here. That would be this person's job, is to figure out how do we do this in the best optimal way to really get the best results and to keep from – one of the things with, I think, state discipline is that it can potentially lead to tyranny, right? Because then the state gets – too much stuff, and they get so into just disciplining. I think we have a big problem with that right now, with like America being one of the biggest imprisoners in the world. Just like an insane amount of people are in prison right now because they're just like punish, bad. But maybe if it was like if we allowed people to say, okay, if you do this, here's what you've said you will do in exchange for making. As a consequence for doing whatever that thing you said you weren't going to do is.
I think that's a great example. I think you look to some other countries as well that even have even stricter laws on incarceration, to where you steal something, it's not a fine, it's not you get, oh crap, I got something on my record. It's incarceration for 10 years, and so stealing an apple just doesn't look as beneficial as it once did. And so there's some different angles to look at that. Is
a lot.
Does stricter drive more obedience, or does more flexibility drive better behavior at the same time?
Yeah. I would love to study more research on that. I know a little bit, but I don't know enough to speak on it at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is some fascinating stuff. So who are the other three?
Rounding out, I think obviously a motivator, someone that's a leader, somebody that's can demonstrate a lack of ego with motivational tendencies. And I'm going to go back historical. Maybe this is probably a bad example, but I'm going to go back to George Washington. You look at somebody that was able to build kind of a uniformity of core beliefs and passion and desires at the expense of your own life, against all odds that were not in your favor. And at the end of it, after demonstrating that much power, to be willing to give it back to the people, not once but twice. As the general, to go back into Philadelphia and say, let me relinquish the military back to the people. The King of England even said that is a man of God, that nobody can have that much power and then be willing to relinquish it that easily.
Wow.
And then, on the footsteps in New York City at the Treasury building, he was then announced as the first president of the United States. And again, King George said, no man can do that no man can do that And if he does it a second time, then he's immortal. And sure enough, he was a president for a period of time and then was able to relinquish his power back to the people.
Setting the stage for the rest of
That's right.
society. Because you could just be like, whoa, this is a new thing. Let's give me a couple more years.
Yeah.
But he didn't. That's remarkable.
So, somebody like that can completely strip their ego away, that's so 100% focused on a common mission or outcome that they will be willing to motivate and inspire to do whatever it takes to get there, but with the most humility possible to understand that they themselves are not bigger than the common goal. I think someone like that definitely needs to be part of your core team.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. That's a big one. I think about leadership a lot while I've thought about, this idea and structuring that. Because I know if I were to do it myself, right, I honestly would just want to get it to that point, like where we have it up and running, it's operating, and then I don't want to step back and just enjoy it. Like, it's going.
Yeah.
I put the right people in power, and now I can just, like, enjoy this awesome thing that's been created, and hopefully it'll continue as it goes. And on top of that, one of the things I think to continue the leadership, formation throughout it, one of the kind of ideas is literally growing leaders. Like, I kind of like the Buddhist idea in a sense, right, with the Dalai Lama, who's selected as a child and is kind of, whether or not it's true that is the Dalai Lama reincarnated, either way, if it's just, which I think it's more along the lines of they just teach and train that person to be a really good leader. They've got that figured out, and I think you can do that and just raise this like really compassionate, awesome person that really cares about the entire community to lead for an extended period of time. Because one of the things that kind of honestly gets me about the way the presidency is run is you get 4, maybe 8 years, and then it's someone new. Like, imagine if imagine if a company was run like that. Like, okay, 4 years, you get that, and then you're out. And it's like any long-term plans you have get shut down because the next person comes in and can do whatever you want to your plans that were supposed to run for X amount of years to really get even followed through on. Mm-hmm. So I don't know exactly, obviously, what the best solution is for that, but that's just kind of things I've thought about.
Well, I think that was the biggest fear in the framework of our nation, was to get away from that kind of that dictatorship approach,
right?
Because I think with that carries a lot of ego. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. It's what I said, and I'm the king, and I'm the dictator, and I am in charge for the next however long, and so it's my way or the highway. So I think that understanding that there is the balance and that pushback, I think it is important to have.
I think without a doubt. And that's the other thing too, is like I totally understand and realize that. And it's like, how do you find that balance? How do you find where you're able to carry out long-term visions without also creating a tyranny and someone with too much power? Because you definitely don't want that. Without a doubt, you want to protect against that as much as possible. But you also need to be able to follow through. And I think maybe I don't know what it is. This is a deep topic. But let's see. What's your fifth person?
Oh, I'm gonna go throw a curveball here and really go sports focused.
Okay.
I think you got to have a Michael Jordan on your team, right? You got to have a GOAT.
Yeah.
You got to have. I think it's good to have. You got to cover your bases, whether it be from kind of behavioral society, a leadership, from a governance motivator, kind of a rule keeper. But I think a society to really perform at its best has got to have hobbies. It's got to have a place of enjoyment and recreational and social component to
Without a doubt.
And so I think somebody that focuses on how do you create lively engagement amongst one another, creates a spirit of competition, but through enjoyment and hobby fashion. I think you got to have somebody like that on your team. And whether it be Michael Jordan or it's, I'm a big tennis fan, so, who knows if you're going to have Roger Federer, whatever. But I think a sports component, I'm a big sports nut. So
Okay.
I love that angle.
I feel you. I feel you on that. I think you definitely there needs to be a level of leisure and fun, without a doubt, right? Because one of the things I think that makes a great city is their nightlife. Like, that brings a city together immensely. I mean, I think that's one of the big reasons that downtown Phoenix has started to become such a hotbed over the past couple of years, is once you saw places like, I think it might even completely be attributed to Crescent Ballroom. Because once places like these nightlife places came in, like Valley Bar, that's bringing people like, oh, I want a place to go out at night when I'm done with all my hard, thought-provoking work or monotonous work. I want to go out and enjoy myself. And typically people like to go out and do nightlife and enjoy and meet and mingle and relax. I think that's essentially important.
I think you have a problem when your capital in the core of your city, when most of the restaurants are closed by 6 p.m.
Right?
That to me is a devastating issue that, for example, the city of Phoenix is worked hard to up against. But when all the people leave at nights and weekends and restaurants aren't open on Saturdays or Sundays, I think you got some problems. It's more than just nice pavement. I think you really need to look at what is it doing to bring people together. What kind of common ground of conversation and social activity can you create to allow people to be comfortable?
I totally agree. I honestly think bars on the weekend should be open later than 2. I think 2 is too early. Everyone wants to keep going. No one's like, I'm done. Well, no, there are some people that are like, obviously done. But there are a lot of people that want to keep going. Like, let's see what the rest of the night's got.
See, and that's a great perspective. But coming from my side of the table with 3 kids, 2 a.m. seems like impossible. Like, I couldn't even stay up till 2 a.m. if I wanted to. I'd be dead asleep by midnight.
Hey, don't get me wrong. I'm not. I'll be doing it sometimes, but I'm also like, I'm trying to get up bed on time. I value my sleep immensely. Yeah. But there are a lot but some nights I'm like, I need to keep going. I'm not done. I want this night to continue on. Maybe I'm out with a pretty girl, whatever.
Sure.
I want to keep going with it.
That's awesome.
But, yeah, man. So, what do you think are some of the biggest hurdles when pulling together the team? I mean, any team in general, but specifically this team. What do you think are going to be some of the things we're going to need to overcome?
That's a great question, and it's super deep. And I'm going to draw a little bit on my recruiting experience because we work with a lot of leaders, C-level executives, all the way to directors and upper-level management roles. And we try to form teams. We try to bring them in and find a cohesive match. And what's interesting is how many times the ego of one person can derail an entire infrastructure. And you see that in when you're recruiting quite a bit. You find the perfect person with the right skill sets, and all of a sudden you get through the interview stage and they're ready and excited. Their ego will just jump right through, and it'll keep them from getting the job because they get stuck on $5,000 on a big compensation level. They're going to get stuck because, no, I deserve more because that other person there is making more than I am, and I'm worth more than this. And so you find a lot of ego will derail what could have been a phenomenal team in structure. So in recruiting and building this team that would start an island, so to speak, you really got to strip away the ego. It's got to find the commonality of those core values. It's got to be centered around that. It's the core values. It's a belief architecture that's going to help you achieve outcome A, B, or C. And that's really, to me, the first thing you got to do is you've got to create a sense of humility.
I totally agree. Ego is the enemy, as Ryan Holiday's book says, which I haven't read yet and want to. Before we go into this, Local Work is the company, again, that Ryan runs. I want to shout that out as much as possible.
I appreciate that.
But yeah, how do you weed out ego? Are there any ways that maybe you've identified to identify ego early on? If someone's going to be more egotistical and not work as much for the group and more for themselves?
There is a number of ways you can do that. But for me, most importantly, is I look at patterns. I'm a big believer in understanding that the best predictor of the future is understanding the past. And in analyzing someone's professional career or kind of their social life, so to speak, you got to look at what they've done in interviewing and in talking about and building a team. I've heard it said many times that you never want to hire somebody that hasn't done it before. Mm-hmm. And so in interviewing, you've got to really focus on experiential lessons learned. Tell me about a time when X. And you've got to listen to the subtleness. Is the story or the experience all about themselves and how they were amazing and they took care of all the credit and they had no liability and they brought, or is that somebody that's talking about we did this, we did that, this person did that, and it helped, get to this outcome. And I think understanding what kind of language they use in describing experiential process and history is really a good influencer on ego.
Yeah, no doubt. You can pick out a lot of that pretty quickly, just by a few of those simple questions. And like I say over and over, the questions you ask, the questions are the answer. It's basically how I kind of live. Like, the better questions you ask, the better answers you're just going to get. And finding those ones is really important. What about the flip side? How do you what might be some of the questions that you ask in order to identify that someone what's technically the opposite of ego? Helpfulness, compassionate.
Yeah, I mean humility.
Humility. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to that. It talks about are they afraid to take credit for great accomplishments? You'll see the way people talk. Sometimes they're overly humble to the point where you wonder where their passions lie, and you got to be careful of that too. Right?
Yeah. The over.
You want somebody that's just super motivated and hungry and has a drive, but you got to minimize that risk of overly ego, willing to sacrifice the next person to make them look better. You have to be real careful of that.
Yeah, because that can be just as big of an issue, because that can also lead to like over timidity too, right? Where they're not going to assert themselves as they might need to in order to, if in a work environment, kind of push things through or voice their ideas, which are often really good, but they just won't voice them because they're afraid that they'll even I'm kind of that person. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to say it because I might make that person look bad, and I'll like be thinking about that, and I'm just be like, no, it's fine.
Yeah,
they'll be okay with it. But I think I lost my train of thought. That happens. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Does everyone have to be behind the vision, or can there be a few people that kind of are just in it to get paid? Or how do you view around people's adherence, or adherence isn't the right word, but I guess commitment to the overarching vision?
Well, going back to my sports love, I guess you could say, you realize the best teams historical across any game ever played is position players always outweigh general players. If you're building the best starting lineup for the New York Yankees, it is not full of utility players. It's the best Derek Jeter you can find at shortstop. It's the best Paul O'Neill in right field. Or, you're finding your core position players to fill the position roles. And so, yes, I do believe that you can hire and you can attract the people to perform very specific functions that align with the overall goal and core values. In the leadership frame of mind, I think you have leaders that are great at X, Y, and Z, and they stay out of A, B, and C, and you leave that to somebody else. And a great performing leadership team knows their strengths, understands their weaknesses, and celebrates those around them that have strengths in their weakness areas. And I think that's, I mean, kind of going back to your core 5 question earlier, is that infrastructure needs to be able to celebrate the strengths of everyone around them.
Yeah, no doubt. And needs to be able to identify both the strengths and the weaknesses, but really be like, oh, this person has got it here. And then by knowing the weaknesses, you can know to help them find the core team that they're going to have, right? Mm-hmm. That's going to fill in that just perfectly. And then it just, that cascades down. And then you have a great team, and then you can make things happen, because that's how anything happens. Like, it's all about the people.
Yeah.
It's all about who's building the thing, because you're building it for the people. The only reason to build a city isn't to build a city or a new society. It's to build it for the people, so everyone can just live better in the long run.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say on that topic?
I think I'm good.
Okay, cool. When we do find the right group of people, how do we keep them on track, and how do we help ensure that they stick around even through like the really hard times and the obstacles that will inevitably arise?
I say this to my sales team quite often, is I'll get approached and they'll say, but Ryan, I can't overcome this objection, or they can't find the right budget to purchase this widget. And the reality is what that tells me is they just don't have the desire to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we get caught up in the words people say, but really the actions always are louder than words. And what I find is that if people and humans have a passion, they will move a mountain to accomplish what they want. If they really, really want to buy something, they will do whatever it takes to get it. Whatever it takes. If it's at their core, they will move mountains to get it. And I believe that. And I think if you're building a society, it's got to be centered around that core passion. It's got to be around, are we all willing to move a mountain to achieve this? And if the answer is yes, and they are continually reminded of that, it's instilled in their hearts to their core. It doesn't matter if there's a tropical storm that hits the island, or if there's some sort of a component that puts fear in their lives, they will find common ground and they will move a mountain.
I love that, man. That's so true. It's along the concept of what I try to implement in my life, which is fuck yes or no, where it's you, and it helps you guide. It's like this nice internal compass that you can use, where when you think about if you want to do something, immediately it'll come to you where you're like, fuck yes, I want to do that thing. When you're like, do I want to do this? Fuck yes. Then you know that passion is there. But there's a lot of things that you'll do where like, all right, do I want to, this isn't a great example, but take out the trash. And you're like, well, I know I need to, but then it's like, well, no, you don't want to do that, right? And having that barometer can really help. And being able, I think, like you said, to constantly remind people, like, here's where we're going, here's why we're doing it. Because in those tough times, right, people will be like, well, I don't know, like, is this really, I know I want to do it, but man, this is getting hard. For that person to come in, the leader, and go, hey, why are we doing this? And then that ignites that back in them. Because they know they want to, they feel it, but sometimes those tough times can just get in the way I'm not explaining this well.
I get it.
Yeah.
You gotta be able to align the passion with it's a clear and obvious yes or a clear and obvious no.
Yeah. And
if you're building a society around a set of core values, the people that are in that society need to be passionate 100%. It's got to be an obvious yes. And if there's that slight hesitation of no, then this isn't the right fit for you. Mm-hmm. And again, going back to the training and sales, my favorite sales trainer out there always says, go for the no. Because the quicker you can get to the no, you stop wasting your time. You can move on.
Right.
You can go down the road to the next prospect. And I think that's in this building the society framework. Go for the no. See if they're willing to push back and say, no, I'm in. I'm in it for the long haul.
Oh, man, that's it. I like that a lot. Because like, oh, you don't want to do this? You're not into it. You're not. I can tell you're not really passionate about it. And they'll be like, no, I am. I want to do this. And then you can I like that. It'll reignite it. Because you're telling them they want to do something when they really do and they know they do. But that might be a good way to help remind them.
Yeah. Not that I'm a fan of this approach, but
I don't know if I am either.
well, you look at like Aaron Ross, for example, that's built this whole sales B2B email marketing approach, and his book on predictable revenue talks about how in one of the emails that drives the most action that he trains his clients on is that, are we okay to close your file? ? In the subject line of the email. And all of a sudden it puts people at a crossroads. I know I've been sold to – this guy's been trying to sell me for the past 3 months, but now I'm at a crossroads. Do I say, yes, go ahead and close my file, and I'm going to miss out on that opportunity to buy that widget? Yeah. Or I'm going to say, no, don't close it yet. I'm ready. But it makes you commit one way or another. And I think in building a society like this, you would need to want people to have that emotional commitment. Push them.
You have to.
You have to push them and see kind of where they're going to go.
Yeah. And if they're not, and if it's not there, you just say that's totally fine. But we have to have the people that have it. Because in order to really make this happen, this insanely immense, crazy vision, you've got to have the people that are going to push through and have that grit and have that tenacity and, most importantly, right, the passion.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. That actually happened to me the other day. I think it was last night. A guy called me about he's some dude from Las Vegas. They had a great sales pitch. I'll give him credit because he's like, "Hey, I'm a VIP guy in Vegas." I'm like, "Oh, I'm VIP." I'm also like, "Where'd you get my number?"
Right.
But then at the end, I was like, "All right, man. Listen, I got some stuff I got to get to. I can't continue this conversation. Can you just email me the stuff?" And he was like, "Well, this is only over the phone kind of thing. Like let's just keep moving. Most people put it on a credit card." I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm not going to do that. Right. So either email me the stuff or it's a no."
That's right.
But I could feel inside me, I could feel myself being like, "Well, it is a really good deal. Could I?" And I was like, "Well, I kind of want it."
Yeah.
I was like, no. I need to not do that right now. That's not where my money needs to be going at the moment. But that is a great strategy, I think. So yeah, man, I mean, that's all I got. Is there anything before we kind of close it up that you'd like to talk about, or any other thoughts or comments about hiring your team?
Well, I think coming down to building, whether it be a team, society, a program, a nonprofit, whatever it is, I think full transparency is going to be your root of success. I think you look at this millennial generation where we've grown up with social media at our fingertips, where we've had a sense, whether it was real or not, we had a sense of transparency. We got a feeling of somebody's lifestyle. It could have been false, and then we're kind of seeing that over and over, that people are only painting the best version of themselves on social media. But what it does is you feel like you're getting the story. You feel like you're getting transparency into that, product, service, or person. And I think in building a team and wanting to attract the right players, there can no longer be any hidden gems. There can no longer hidden outcomes or goals or core values. It has to be fully in front of them. One of my favorite case studies, there's a company that analyzes the analytics of the behavior of job seekers. And it's found that your average job seeker will engage with over 12 pieces of content about your company before they actually apply to your job. Now that number was staggering to me. Because I'm like,
Right.
well, how do they come up with 12 pieces of content? And you start rattling off, and it actually becomes pretty easy to understand.
Mm-hmm.
If I find a company, I want to work for JP's company, I'm going to go right to Google, and I'm going to type in JP company reviews. And then I'm going to look at their Glassdoor reviews, because Glassdoor reviews, frankly, are showing up ahead of Yelp reviews for most companies right now.
Wow.
It's showing that people care about the human side of business. They care about what do previous employees, current employees say about their leader. What's the CEO score? There's a reason that Glassdoor just sold for over $1 billion, with a huge multiplier on their current revenue, and it's because there's so much strength to people wanting transparency inside an organization. So you really want to attract the right people to, like I said, your nonprofit, whether it be your chamber of commerce, whether it be your business, your startup you're trying to scale. Create a sense of transparency around core values to drive X results. And you would be amazed how quickly people can buy in to that mission. But most importantly is you're helping them self-eliminate from the pipeline. Because if they see your core values don't align with their core values, great. I want you to discover that right now than wasting my time on 3 rounds of interviews and training 90 days later, and then you tell me, I actually don't like this customer base. I hate working with them. Well, then why did you accept the job? And so full transparency does 2 things. A, it's going to motivate your audience even more so, but it's going to push away the people that shouldn't be there in the first place.
Yeah. Wow, I love that. Totally. I hate when I'm going to, or not I hate, but one of the things I'm very cognizant of when I'm going to a website to look at a place I might want to work is coming back to Simon Sinek. Do they have a good why statement? Why is this company in operation? What do they really care about? And that'll be a big indicator. And then that helps me weed out myself from that company. And now I know, oh, that's not where I want to work. But also, especially the ones that put an extra effort into writing a really good careers page. There's something like apply here. And the other ones are like put so much time and effort. I'm like, then that's probably someone at work because they care about hiring good people because they're putting extra effort into recruiting me. And you can tell that.
100%. A great case study that we're building right now, using localwork.com to post their jobs. Their job description consisted of, we're looking for drivers willing to work nights and weekends, some part-time options available. That was their job description.
Right.
And it was a battle working with this executive on, we need to change it.
Without a doubt.
We got to talk about who you are. He goes, well, we're a trucking company. We need just drivers. Well, what are you transporting? Well, we're transporting exclusively water containers. Why are you doing water containers? Well, there's people up on reservations and in small towns that need water containers that has clean water. So when there's monsoons that come through or it flushes out and their water system goes down and they're not able to cycle through the water, they can have clean water to save, for the hospital.
Yeah. Okay, I'm in.
Well, that's a whole different story.
Totally.
Now all of a sudden we craft a culture component around that, and we tell the why behind the business is because we want to add fresh and clean water to civilizations or societies that don't have access to it when natural disasters hit. That strikes a different chord. All of a sudden that job description becomes a passion statement, and it becomes a buy-in, so that when that employee now gets another job offer from somebody else and it's around the same compensation level and everything else is the same ticker, whose job are they going to choose? They're going to go with the job that they most align with from an emotional standpoint. And so I'm a huge fan of telling your why in a transparent manner.
I totally agree, man. On that note, I'm going to kind of talk about why I think build the society, man. A big part of it is, I think where we're at now in society is, in history as like a society and as a species really, is pretty amazing. I think this is one of the most spectacular times in history to ever live. The rate of advancement in technology and healthcare, the overall rate of most people is significantly increasing. Like, people are way better off than they've ever been. Everyone, like, so many people are living 100x better than kings were living in like the 1400s or whatever, right? Nonetheless, I think there's a lot that is leading us down a not so great path. And there's a lot of sickness. And I see with all of this, we're also seeing people higher rates of depression and loneliness, which is a serious issue. And I think there's just a lot that can be done better. And I think fixing the society as it is, there's just too many aspects that are all intertwined that you have to fix all of them at once in order to even fix one, really, right? And so the conclusion I kind of came to was the best way to do it is just to start over and take all the amazing stuff that we've learned and all the stuff that is not so amazing and learn from that and say, okay, how do we do better moving forward for not even for like the generation that's first going to start it. Those people are going to have to make a huge sacrifice and be like, we're just going to put in a lot of effort for probably nothing. We're going to die like working our asses off in order to create a better, not a utopia, not an amazing, not like the best society that's maybe ever been, but just a better one that is for the next generation and generations after that to come. And really thinking about long-term vision over what's going to be for us right now. So yeah, man.
See, that's a passion.
Yeah.
That's your why. It's going to get people aligned with that. And I think that's the important thing is find that alignment. Mm-hmm. And you're going to get a lot of no's along the way,
without a doubt.
As does everybody.
Yeah.
But the quicker you can go through the no's to find that yes is where you're going to find scalability and growth.
Yeah. That's why I've been doing rejection therapy. Have you seen those videos on my Facebook?
I have. It's been quite incredible.
Thanks, man.
I hate rejection. And
so do I. That's why.
I'm totally impressed.
Yeah. They've been fun. You can, as I do it too, I feel like this stripping away of all these like, reservations that I've had in the past and like hesitations. And now I'm just like, well, let's just go see what happens. Slowly but surely, everyone, just a little bit more.
Well, I think it makes you find who you are faster, to where you're able to not worry about what other people think about.
Yeah,
because you're so secure of who you are. You're okay with differing thoughts of you being an idiot.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
To me, I've been on national television and I've been called out as being an idiot, and God, that really gets to your core. I mean, if you're not really sound in who you are, that could really break you.
Totally.
And I've had to find that the quickest way to get over your own little ego of other people not liking you is you have to love yourself. You have to find who you are and love that version of yourself.
Definitely.
So I think this rejection therapy is really fascinating because it forces you got to just own yourself.
Yeah. And just do it. And the big part is like as long as you're kind and you come at like a solid, and you come in at like just like kind and friendly. People are often just apologize. They're like, "Oh, I'm sorry. And you're like, you don't have to apologize. Like you're just following like the rules you're supposed to follow.
Yeah.
I'm the one that should be apologizing for asking like a weird question, or like asking for a weird request. But really, if I found it just as long as you're cool and friendly about it and don't freak out, everything turns out pretty much fine.
Where do you come up with your ideas?
I don't actually. I'm following. This is a thing that some other guy did.
Oh, interesting.
And so I'm just following his list. I'm going to do it for 100 days.
Wow.
And
what day are you on?
8, I think. Or no, today's 9.
Is it getting easier or harder?
It's getting easier. Actually, last night was my hardest one, man. And it was funny because it was asking someone. His was some weird one, but last night was. I came up with having to go and asking to cut someone in line. And
like at a store?
I went to Sprouts.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And I walked around for probably like 10 minutes before.
Because you were nervous?
Yeah, I was so nervous.
Yeah.
Because here's why. Like with the other ones that I've done so far, like I could just leave. Like I could just say the thing, be like, oh, okay, cool, and then walk out and not have to be around them anymore. With this one, like I just kept getting in my head, which wasn't an issue. I just talked to him however I talked to him. And I know I could do that. But for some reason, like having to stand next to him for like 2 minutes as they check out, it just got to me. But I ended up going and standing in line. And I said to the lady, I didn't say anything to the lady that I was supposed to do it to. I didn't do it. I chickened out because she was like right there and her things were all there and she's like checking out, which would have been an immediate no. It would have just gotten it because she'd been like, no, my stuff's here. So I like kind of did a constellation, and I asked the guy behind me if he wanted to cut me. And we had a nice conversation. And basically the same thing happened. We just chatted and turned out fine.
So you didn't go for the rejection. You went for the conformal
I
good
did.
guy approach.
I know. I did. I technically failed last night. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I was in my mind at the time.
So what's your head trash?
Sure.
What's keeping you from asking the lady?
It was just I was just thinking. What it comes down to is just people thinking, I guess, that I'm weird, which again I don't care about. I think that's the subconscious thing that's running. A big one too, or I think mainly it was just like the awkward feeling of standing there, which I don't mind either. Which is the funny thing. It's just like a lot of that subconscious stuff when you're a kid keeps you from doing those things. When you just be like, no, you, no little stupid subconscious brain. I'm going to do this thing. It's going to be fine, and you need to not worry about it.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll keep watching. I'll keep
watching, man.
Wow, 92 days to go.
Right.
I'm sure there'll be some good ones in there.
I think so, and I think I'll get better at it. I'm gonna definitely get more. I can feel myself getting more like not just taking no and trying to actually push for the yes, which has been fun to kind of develop. But yeah, man, let's kind of wrap it up. And tell the internet, how can people help you, and where can they go find you on the internet?
Yeah, so obviously, I'm on LinkedIn, and I got some personal profile pages up there. If anyone wants to get in touch with me, RD Naylor is my Twitter handle. I'm extremely passionate around company culture, so much so that I took the data from a job board that I've run for the past 7 years, where I've understood that the top 10% of companies in recruiting all do one thing really great, and it's they talk about their company culture before they talk about their job. And so I built an entire software around that concept called Viva HR, and it's how you create job descriptions that come to life. And it's a job posting automation software that once you can tell that culture story, it pushes it out amongst all the major job boards to drive like-minded candidates back into your company. And so I'm very passionate around this subject and organizational behavior, company culture, full transparency. We're the first ever that's created a culture funnel for every single job that you're recruiting for. So it embeds a variety of media content from videos, photos, and it creates an engaging environment to tell the culture story as transparently as possible before they apply to the job, so that when you do get candidates through your funnel, they're more vetted than any other candidate you've ever found.
Love it. I love it. And I've seen Viva HR. It's awesome. Definitely go check it out. And find Ryan. He's a great dude. One of the most awesome people, I think, in the SPHX community. Great entrepreneur. Great dude. And thanks again, man. Really appreciate you coming on. You're the guy to talk about this with.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yeah, man. Have a good one.